The crystal champagne flute shattered in my grip as I watched my husband of 8 years wrap his arms around my younger sister. My 35th birthday party, held in the grand ballroom of the Porter family bakery's headquarters, transformed from celebration to nightmare in mere seconds. Everyone, we have an announcement. Wilfred's voice boomed across the room, cutting through the elegant piano music. My sister Maya, draped in a red dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary, beamed at the gathered crowd. Maya and I are engaged. I'm Daphne, and this is how I lost everything I thought I had, and found something better. The room erupted in gasps. Somewhere, a tray of appetizers crashed to the floor. I stood frozen, blood dripping from where the broken glass had cut my palm, but I couldn't feel the pain. Daphne? Marcus, my father's oldest friend and our company's CFO, appeared at my side with a napkin. You're bleeding. When? The word escaped my lips, barely a whisper. 6 months ago, Maya announced proudly, her voice carrying across the stunned silence. We didn't want to say anything until we were sure. 6 months. While I was working 14-hour days to keep our family's legacy alive, my husband and sister were... Of course, we all know why this happened, Wilfred continued, his words slicing through me like ice. When your wife cares more about profit margins than making a home. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. These were my employees, my business partners, my supposed friends. Now they wouldn't meet my eyes. You couldn't even give him children, Maya added, twisting the knife, too busy building an empire to build a family. I straightened my spine, years of board meetings kicking in. And you've been building what exactly, Maya, besides a collection of maxed-out credit cards? At least I know how to make a man happy, she shot back. Marcus stepped forward. I think that's enough. No, I cut him off, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Let them finish. I want to hear how long they've been planning to announce their engagement at my birthday party. Wilfred at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Daff, you're always so focused on the business. We thought this would be the only way to get everyone together. Everyone? I gestured to the room. You mean my employees? The people whose livelihoods depend on the empire I built while you were playing golf and charging luxury cars to the company account? Maya's smirk faltered. Several guests began edging toward the exits. I gave everything to this family, I continued, my voice rising. I put my art degree on hold when Dad died. I worked every holiday, every weekend, turned 3 failing bakeries into a national chain. And this is how you repay me? Oh, here we go again with the martyr act. Maya rolled her eyes. Some of us actually want lives outside of spreadsheets and profit reports. The room spun slightly. Marcus gripped my elbow, steadying me. Let me call you a car. No. I squared my shoulders, facing my husband and sister. You want the business so badly? It's yours. All of it. Every spreadsheet, every profit report, every supplier contract, and employee pension plan. Let's see how long you last without the workaholic sister holding it all together. I turned to leave, but Wilfred's voice stopped me. Daphne, don't be dramatic. You're making a scene. A scene? I laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. You announced your engagement to my sister at my birthday party, and I'm making a scene? I scanned the room one last time, memorizing the faces of everyone who stood silent, watching my humiliation like it was the evening's entertainment. The board meets Tuesday at 9. I announced to no one in particular. I'll have my resignation ready. And Maya? I met my sister's eyes. That empire you've been so jealous of, it's built on relationships, trust, and 18-hour workdays. Good luck maintaining any of those things. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high, leaving behind the sound of urgent whispers and Maya's indignant protests. In the elevator, I finally allowed myself to shake, to feel the full weight of the betrayal crushing my chest. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your grandmother Ellie sends her love. She says it's time to come home. I hadn't spoken to my grandmother in 15 years, not since she opposed my decision to abandon art school for the family business. Now, standing in the lobby of the building that had consumed my life, I realized maybe she had seen something I couldn't. The valet brought my car around. As I slid behind the wheel, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked exactly like the successful businesswoman I'd worked so hard to become. Perfectly styled hair, designer dress, expertly applied makeup. But for the first time in years, I didn't recognize myself at all. I pulled out my phone and typed a response to the unknown number. Tell Grandma Ellie I'm on my way. Grandmother Ellie's house looked exactly as I remembered it. A small Victorian painted pale yellow with window boxes overflowing with herbs. The scent of baking bread wafted through the screen door as I stood on the porch, my designer suitcase feeling ridiculously out of place. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Took you long enough, Grandma Ellie said, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. 15 years is a rather long detour, wouldn't you say? I burst into tears. She pulled me into a hug that smelled of yeast and vanilla, and suddenly I was 10 years old again, helping her knead dough in her sunny kitchen. There, she murmured. Some things need to break before they can become something new. Inside, the house was a time capsule. Family photos lined the walls, including ones of me in art school, paint-splattered and grinning. I touched one frame gently. You kept these? Of course I did. She gestured to the kitchen. Come, tea first, then we'll talk about those vultures you call family. I followed her, sinking into a worn wooden chair while she puttered around with an ancient kettle. How did you know what happened? Marcus called me. She set a steaming mug in front of me. He's been keeping me updated about you for years. Did you think I wouldn't want to know how my granddaughter was doing? I thought you hated me, I admitted, for choosing the business over art. She snorted. Hate you? Child, I was disappointed that you felt forced to choose at all. Your father's death wasn't your burden to bear alone. Someone had to save the business, and someone had to save you from yourself. She pulled a leather-bound book from a shelf. But we'll get to that. First, tell me about this husband of yours, the one who thought announcing his engagement to your sister at your birthday party was appropriate behavior. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. There's not much to tell. I was too busy for him, apparently, too focused on work, not maternal enough. Nonsense. She slapped the book down on the table. You were too good for him, and he knew it. Men like that can't stand successful women. They need someone they can control, like your sister. Maya always wanted what I had. Maya wanted what she thought you had, Grandma corrected. The prestige, the power. She never saw the sacrifice, the dedication, and now she'll learn the hard way. She opened the book, revealing yellowed pages covered in handwritten recipes. Your great-grandmother wrote these when she first came to this country. She had nothing but these recipes and a dream of feeding people food that reminded them of home. I traced the faded writing with my finger. I remember you telling me that story when I was little. What I didn't tell you was that her husband left her for another woman. Grandma's eyes twinkled. She took those recipes and opened a cafe that put his fancy restaurant out of business within a year. I looked up sharply. Really? Really. The best revenge isn't plotting and scheming. It's living well and letting karma do its job. She turned another page. Now, how are your baking skills these days? Rusty, I admitted. I've been more focused on spreadsheets than spatulas. Perfect time to relearn then. She stood up, reaching for aprons. These recipes aren't just instructions. They're our family's history. Each one tells a story. As we worked together in the kitchen, Grandma told me about my great-grandmother's café, about the community she built, about how success meant more than just money in the bank. You've lost yourself, Daphne, she said, showing me how to properly fold pastry dough. You became what everyone expected you to be instead of who you are. And who am I? That's what we're going to find out. She pointed to a small storefront across the street. That space has been empty for months. The owner's an old friend. Prime location for a cafe, don't you think? I stared at her. Grandma, I can't just what? Start over? Follow your passion? Prove that success doesn't have to mean sacrificing your soul? She handed me a rolling pin. Watch your pressure. Gentle but firm, just like life. As the afternoon turned to evening, we baked and talked. She told me stories about my father I'd never heard, about how he'd wanted to be a chef before obligation dragged him into management. The business killed him, you know, she said quietly. All that stress, those endless hours. Is that what you want for yourself? I looked down at my flour-covered hands, so different from the manicured perfection they'd been this morning. No, I whispered. No, it's not. She nodded, satisfied. Good, because tomorrow, we're going to look at that storefront, and then we're going to talk about all the ways you can make those recipes sing in a way that corporate chain baking never could. For the first time since my birthday party, I felt something like hope flutter in my chest. They won't expect that, I said. Wilfred and Maya, they'll expect me to fight for the business. Grandma smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. Exactly. Sometimes the best moves in life are the ones nobody sees coming. You're holding that piping bag like it's a weapon, Tomas said, leaning against the counter of my newly rented storefront. Relax your grip. Let it flow naturally. I loosened my death grip on the bag, watching as the cream formed a perfect rosette on top of the pastry. After 3 weeks of renovation and practice, my hands were finally remembering their old skills. Better, he nodded, his chef's eyes critical but kind. Now do it 50 more times, I groaned. Remind me again why I let Grandma convince me to hire you as a consultant? Because I'm the best artisanal baker in the city, he grinned, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. And because we went to art school together before you abandoned us for the corporate world. Low blow, I muttered, but smiled. Having an old friend help design my cafe's menu felt right, like pieces of my past and future clicking into place. The bell above the door chimed, and Grandma Ellie walked in with Marcus in tow. Well, this looks promising, Marcus said, surveying the space. The walls, once dingy white, now glowed with warm terracotta. Mismatched vintage tables dotted the floor, and the display cases, though empty, gleamed with possibility. How's the recipe testing going? Grandma asked, peering at my latest attempts. Ask the taskmaster. I nodded toward Thomas. He's rejected half my grandmother's recipes for being too commercial. Because they've been simplified over the years, Thomas defended. We're going back to the originals. Show them the spice cake. I pulled out the test cake we'd made that morning, cutting slices. The recipe had taken 3 days to perfect, using my great-grandmother's precise instructions about toasting the spices and incorporating them in layers. Marcus took a bite and closed his eyes. This is not what we serve at Porter family bakeries. That's the point, I said. This is about heritage, about doing things the right way instead of the fast way. I hesitated. How are things at the company? He grimaced. Your sister's trying, I'll give her that. But Wilfred, let's just say golf games don't pay the bills. They're asking about you, Grandma added, helping herself to more cake. Maya called me twice this week. What did you tell her? That you're busy creating something beautiful. She patted my hand. Don't worry about them. Focus on this. Thomas cleared his throat. Speaking of this, I have news. Remember my friend at Local Flavors magazine? I nodded, piping another rosette. She wants to do a feature on the Café, your story. Corporate executive returns to her roots, reviving family recipes. It's exactly what they love. The piping bag slipped, ruining the design. What? We're not even open yet. That's the point. They want to document the journey, do a big spread for the opening. He grinned. Unless you're not interested in free publicity. He's right, Marcus said. This could be huge. The timing couldn't be better, with the main company struggling. I don't want this to be about revenge, I interrupted. The Café needs to stand on its own merits. Grandma snorted. Who says it can't do both? I looked around the space. My space. The antique coffee grinder Grandma had contributed, the hand-painted signs Thomas's artist wife was creating, the display cases waiting to be filled with carefully crafted pieces of my family's history. Okay, I said, but we do it right. No shortcuts. Speaking of doing things right, Thomas pulled out his phone. I want to show you something. He pulled up photos of an old-fashioned coffee roaster. It's for sale. The owner's retiring. If we want to do proper coffee service, we can't afford that, I started, but Grandma cut me off. Yes, you can. She pulled an envelope from her bag. I was waiting for the right moment. This was your father's insurance money. I've been saving it for when you found your way back to what really matters. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Grandma, I can't. You can and you will. Her voice was firm. Your father never got to follow his dreams. He'd want this for you. Thomas squeezed my shoulder. The magazine shoot is in 2 weeks. We can have everything ready by then, especially with the extra help. Extra help? The bell chimed again, and a group of young people walked in. Culinary students, I realized, seeing their eager faces. "Your intern crew," Tomas announced. "They're here to learn the art of traditional baking. In exchange, they'll help with prep and service once we open." I looked at them, then at my grandmother's recipes, then at the space that was slowly becoming everything I'd never known I wanted. "All right, everyone grab an apron," I said. "Let's make something extraordinary." As the kitchen filled with voices and energy, I caught Grandma wiping away a tear. "What?" I asked. She smiled. "For the first time since your father died, this feels like family again." I hugged her, flour dust rising between us like memories finding their way home. "The magazine shoot went perfectly," Marcus said, sliding into his usual spot at my cafe's corner table. "But that's not why I'm here." I set down his usual cappuccino, made with our newly installed vintage roaster. The rich aroma of freshly ground beans filled the air. "What's wrong?" He pulled out a folder. "Remember those investment properties Wilfred insisted on buying last year? The ones I advised against? What about them?" "They're mortgaged to the hilt, and that's just the beginning." He spread out several documents. "Your husband has been taking out personal loans using company assets as collateral. The amounts are significant." I sank into the chair across from him. "How significant?" "7 figures." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "And that's not counting the gambling debts." "Gambling debts?" The cup rattled slightly as I set it down. "Since when does Wilfred gamble?" "Since about the time you started working 16-hour days to keep the company afloat." He hesitated. "There's more. The corporate credit cards? Let me guess. Maya?" He nodded. "Designer clothes, luxury spa treatments, first-class flights, all charged to the company accounts." A burst of laughter from the kitchen caught my attention. Thomas was teaching the interns how to laminate dough properly, their faces focused and eager. The contrast between their genuine passion and my sister's hollow materialism made my chest ache. "Does the board know?" "Not yet, but they will when the quarterly reports come out next week." Marcus leaned forward. "Daphne, they're going to come asking for your help. The company won't survive this without you." "Good." The word came out harder than I intended. "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" I gestured around the cafe. "Look at this place, Marcus. We've been open 2 weeks, and we're already turning people away. Every pastry is made by hand, every coffee bean carefully selected. This is what my father wanted before obligation trapped him in a corporate machine." The bell above the door chimed. Maya walked in, looking less polished than usual in a simple sweater and jeans. She froze when she saw me, then squared her shoulders and approached. "We need to talk," she said. Marcus stood. "I should go." "Stay," I said. "Whatever she has to say, you can hear it." Maya slid into the third chair, eyeing the cappuccino. "This is nice. Quaint." "It's authentic," I corrected. "Something you wouldn't understand." "I understand more than you think." She twisted her engagement ring. "Our mother's ring," I noticed with a fresh stab of pain. "Wilfred's not who I thought he was." "Really? The man who cheated on his wife with her sister turned out to be morally questionable. I'm shocked." "I deserve that," she said quietly. "But this isn't about him. It's about the company. Dad's legacy. Dad's legacy died the moment you two decided to betray me." I stood up. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do." "Please," her voice cracked. "I don't know what to do. The suppliers are demanding payment up front now. The banks are calling about loan payments." "Sounds like a you problem." "It's a family problem." She grabbed my arm. "You can't just walk away." "Like you walked away with my husband?" I yanked free. "The business is yours now, remember? You wanted my life so badly. Well, here it is. All the responsibility, all the pressure, all the late nights and difficult decisions." "I made a mistake," she whispered. "You made several." I looked at her properly for the first time. The designer clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, the strain around her mouth. "How's it feel, Maya? Being the one everyone depends on?" She slumped in her chair. "I hate it. I don't know how you did it for so long." "I did it because I thought I had to." The scent of fresh bread wafted from the kitchen. But I was wrong. There are better ways to honor family than sacrificing yourself. Marcus cleared his throat. "The board meeting is Tuesday. They'll want answers." "Tell them to ask their CEO," I said. "I'm sure Maya and Wilfred have everything under control." Maya stood up, desperation clear in her eyes. What if, what if we offered you your old position back? Full control, no interference? I laughed. You still don't get it, do you? I don't want it back. Look around. This is what I want. Real food, real connections, real purpose. The company will fail without you, she said. Maybe it should. I picked up Marcus's empty cup. Sometimes things need to break before they can become something new. She flinched, recognizing Grandma's words. You're enjoying this, aren't you? No, I said honestly, but I'm not saving you from it either. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have pastries to make. I walked away, leaving her standing there among the morning regulars, looking lost in a world she'd thought she wanted but never understood. The local Flavors magazine feature hit newsstands on a rainy Tuesday morning. By noon, the line outside my cafe stretched around the block despite the weather. Tomas took one look at the crowd and called in reinforcements, his wife and 2 more culinary students. They're here for your story as much as the food, he said, sliding another tray of pastries into the display case. The prodigal daughter returns, creates artisanal paradise. It's catnip for food tourists. They're here because you helped me create something special, I corrected. But my response was cut short by my phone buzzing. Another text from Wilfred, the 10th this morning. Still trying to reach you? Tomas asked. Ever since the magazine mentioned I was the former CEO of Porter Family Bakeries, the vultures have been circling. I deleted the message without reading it. Apparently, their stock dropped 30% this morning. Good. He squeezed my shoulder. Now focus on what matters. Table 3 wants to meet the owner. I spent the next few hours talking with customers, sharing stories about the recipes, watching faces light up with each bite of properly made pastry. This, I realized, was what Dad had dreamed of before reality forced him down a different path. The afternoon lull was just setting in when Marcus burst through the door, his tie askew. Turn on the news. Now. Tomas flipped on the small TV we kept behind the counter. There was Wilfred standing outside Porter Family Bakery's headquarters, looking significantly less polished than usual. Regret to announce that in light of recent financial discoveries, the board has called for a full audit of company accounts, he was saying. We assure our shareholders that steps are being taken. They found the hidden accounts, Marcus said quietly, the ones he used for gambling. I watched my soon-to-be ex-husband squirm under the reporter's questions, feeling oddly detached. How bad is it? Bad enough that the FBI is involved. Apparently, he wasn't just gambling, he was using company funds to cover other people's debts. For a fee, of course. A commotion at the door drew our attention. Maya pushed her way inside. Mascara streaked down her face. Did you know? She demanded. Did you know what he was doing? If I had known, I would have stopped it, I said. Unlike some people, I actually cared about the company's welfare. She collapsed into a chair. He told me it was just a rough patch, that once we pushed you out, he'd fix everything. And you believed him? I started laughing. Oh, Maya, you really thought it was that simple? That running a national corporation was just about wearing nice suits and making speeches? I thought. She trailed off, looking lost. I don't know what I thought. Thomas appeared with a cup of tea, setting it in front of her. Drink this, then leave. We're still running a business here. The TV was showing footage of police entering the corporate headquarters. My phone started ringing. Reporters, probably, wanting comments from the former CEO. The board wants you back, Maya said suddenly. They're willing to offer anything. Majority control, your own team, whatever you want. What I want, I said slowly, is for you and Wilfred to finally face the consequences of your actions. He's going to jail, she whispered, and I don't know how to fix this. That's the point. I walked over to the display case, began rearranging pastries that didn't need rearranging. Some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals run too deep. We're family. Family? I spun around. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't announce their engagement to their sister's husband at her birthday party. Family doesn't try to destroy everything someone spent years building. The cafe had gone quiet, customers pretending not to listen while catching every word. I'm sorry, she said, tears falling again. I was jealous. You had everything. The success, the respect, the perfect life. Perfect? I gestured around the cafe. This is perfect. Creating something with my own hands, honoring our real family legacy, not some corporate machine. What I had before was a prison I built myself. Marcus's phone buzzed. He checked it, his eyes widening. The board just called an emergency meeting. They're voting to file for bankruptcy protection. Maya made a small, broken sound. Daddy's company. Dad's dream was to feed people food that mattered, I said. Not to build an empire. You and Wilfred killed his company. I'm building his dream. She stood up shakily. What am I supposed to do now? That's not my problem. I turned away, back to my customers, my cafe, my real legacy. Maybe try getting a real job for once. The bell chimed as she left. On the TV, they were leading Wilfred out in handcuffs. You okay? Tomas asked quietly. I picked up a piping bag, began decorating a fresh batch of pastries. My hands were steady, my heart lighter than it had been in years. I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. They're offering you the moon, Marcus said, spreading documents across my kitchen table. It was after hours, and the cafe below still smelled of fresh bread and coffee. Full control, triple your previous salary, complete autonomy and restructuring. The board's desperate, I replied, needing dough for tomorrow's breakfast service. They've lost 60% of their value in 2 weeks. Which is exactly why they need you. He tapped the contracts. You could save the company, Daphne. Your father's legacy? Stop. I dusted flour off my hands. My father's real legacy is currently rising and proving baskets downstairs. This? I gestured at the contracts. This is just paperwork. The back door chimed. Thomas walked in, carrying a bottle of wine. Thought we might need this. The news is reporting more arrests at corporate. Wilfred's golf buddies? I asked. He nodded, uncorking the bottle. Turns out your ex-husband's gambling ring went deeper than anyone thought. Half the executive board was involved. And they still think I'll come back to clean up their mess? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's not just about cleaning up, Marcus insisted. Think about the employees, the families that depend on those paychecks. The same employees who stood silent at my birthday party? I poured 3 glasses of wine. The same families who've been gossiping about my failure ever since I opened this cafe. Most of them had no idea what Wilfred was doing. But they knew what he and Maya did to me. I took a sip of wine, and not one of them spoke up. The kitchen fell silent except for the gentle hum of the refrigerators. Through the window, I could see Grandma's house across the street, lights still on despite the late hour. I have a counter-proposal, I said finally. The company owns 23 locations, right? Marcus nodded. I'll buy 3 of them. The original stores my father started. At market value, no negotiations. I met his surprised stare. The company gets an injection of cash. I get to preserve the parts that actually matter, and everyone else can figure out their own salvation. That's actually brilliant, Thomas said. Small enough to manage properly, but big enough to matter. The board won't like it, Marcus warned. The board can kiss my spatula. I pulled out my phone, showing them the cafe's financials. We're doing better numbers per square foot than any Porter family location ever did. Quality over quantity, real food over mass production. And what about Maya? Thomas asked quietly. As if summoned by her name, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Please, I need your help. I don't know what to do. I deleted it without responding. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. Marcus started gathering the contracts. I'll present your offer tomorrow. But Daphne? He hesitated. Are you sure? This is your chance to take back everything they stole from you. They didn't steal anything, I said. They showed me what I really wanted. I gestured around the kitchen, at the proving baskets full of slowly rising dough, the recipe books open on the counter, the wine glasses catching the evening light. This is mine. Really mine. The front bell chimed, unusual for this hour. Grandma Ellie walked in carrying a wooden box. Good, you're all here, she said, setting the box on the table. I've been waiting for the right moment to share these. She opened the box, revealing old photographs, letters, and a leather-bound journal. Your father's recipes, she explained, the ones he created before your grandfather forced him into management. I picked up the journal with trembling hands. Inside, Dad's familiar handwriting detailed dreams of small cafes, artisanal breads, communities built around real food. He never showed me these. He didn't want you to feel the same pull he did, Grandma said softly. He thought he was protecting you by keeping you focused on the business. I traced his words with my finger, tears blurring my vision. He would have loved this place. He would have loved seeing you happy, Grandma corrected. Now, about those 3 locations you're planning to buy. I looked up sharply. How did you? She winked. I have my sources, and I have suggestions. That recipe journal isn't just recipes, it's your father's original business plan. Small, connected cafes, each with their own character but sharing the same soul. Marcus was already making notes. We could have the paperwork ready by Monday. Good. I stood up, suddenly energized, because I have plans for those spaces that would make my father proud. Tomas raised his glass. To new beginnings. To karma, Grandma added with a mischievous smile. To doing things right, I finished, clinking my glass against theirs. Outside, the city was quieting down for the night, but in my kitchen, my real kitchen, the future was rising like well-proofed dough, full of possibility and promise. The day the bankruptcy proceedings became public, Wilfred and Maya showed up at my cafe together. They looked terrible. Him in a rumpled suit without a tie, her in yesterday's clothes, both wearing the haunted expressions of people watching their world collapse. 5 minutes, Wilfred said, his voice hoarse. Please. I glanced at Thomas, who nodded slightly. I've got the kitchen covered. 5 minutes, I agreed, leading them to the back office. The contrast between their designer clothes and my flour-dusted apron felt oddly satisfying. The plea deal, Wilfred started. I know about the plea deal, I cut him off. 3 to 5 years, depending on cooperation, Marcus told me. I can fix this, he insisted. If you'll just talk to the board, tell them I was acting under stress. Under stress? I laughed. You stole millions, ran an illegal gambling operation, and destroyed a 60-year-old company. That's not stress, that's criminal behavior. Maya stepped forward. The company's not destroyed yet. Your offer to buy the 3 original locations. We could expand that. Buy more stores, keep people employed. We? I raised an eyebrow. There is no we, Maya. Not anymore. I'm your sister. You were my sister when you slept with my husband. You were my sister when you announced your engagement at my birthday party. You were my sister when you helped drive our father's company into the ground. I gestured to the office door. Now you're just someone who's about to leave my cafe. You can't just abandon everyone, Wilfred protested. The employees, the suppliers. Like you abandoned your responsibilities to golf and gambling? I pulled out a folder. I've already contacted every employee from the 3 locations I'm buying. They'll all have jobs, better wages, and actual training in artisanal baking. The rest? That's your mess to clean up. Maya sank into a chair. I never wanted this. No, you wanted my life. How's that working out for you? The board is meeting tomorrow, Wilfred said. One word from you could what? Erase your crimes? Save you from consequences? That's not happening. I opened the office door. Your 5 minutes are up. Please. Maya grabbed my arm. We're family. Family forgives. I gently removed her hand. Family trusts. Family supports. Family doesn't betray. I stepped back. You two deserve each other. Now get out of my cafe. They left, shoulders slumped, the weight of their choices visible in every step. Through the kitchen window, I watched them argue on the sidewalk before going their separate ways. Grandma appeared beside me, holding 2 cups of coffee. You okay? Better than okay. I accepted the coffee. For the first time, I feel completely free of them. Good. She nodded toward the front of the cafe, where customers were lined up out the door. Because you have more important things to focus on. The day flew by in a blur of baking and customers. That evening, as we were closing up, Marcus arrived with news. The board accepted your offer, he said, helping himself to a leftover pastry. The 3 original locations are yours, and he grinned. You'll never guess who just resigned. Maya? Effective immediately. Apparently she's moving back in with your parents. Tomas snorted from where he was cleaning the espresso machine. Karma's not just a concept, it's a lifestyle. Speaking of lifestyle changes, Grandma pulled out Dad's old recipe journal. I found something interesting. Your father had plans for these locations. Each one specialized in different aspects of baking. One for bread, one for pastries, one for coffee and community events. I took the journal, studying the careful notes and drawings. He really had it all figured out. And now you can make it happen, Marcus said. The right way, this time. My phone buzzed. Another text from Maya. I'm sorry for everything. I hope someday you can forgive me. For the first time, I didn't delete it immediately. Instead, I typed back, someday, but not today. The contractors start tomorrow at the first location, Tomas reminded me. You ready for this? I looked around my cafe, at the happy customers, the skilled staff, the warmth and authenticity we'd created. Then I looked at my father's journal, at his dreams that were finally going to become reality. More than ready, I said. It's time to build something real. Grandma raised her coffee cup. To karma. To karma, we echoed. And in that moment, I could almost feel Dad smiling down at us, proud of the legacy that was finally finding its true form. Outside, the sun was setting on another busy day. Through the window, I could see the sold signs going up on the first of my new locations. Not an empire, but something better. A dream built on passion, integrity, and the sweet taste of justice served warm from the oven. They're doing a story about him in the business section, Thomas said, sliding the newspaper across the counter. Local businessman sentenced in fraud case. I glanced at Wilfred's mugshot but didn't bother reading the article. Instead, I focused on arranging fresh pastries in the display case of our newest location, the third and final piece of my father's original vision. 4 years, Marcus added, sipping his morning coffee. Could have been worse. Could have been better, Grandma muttered from where she was teaching interns the proper way to laminate croissant dough. The bell chimed. Maya walked in, looking different than I remembered. Simpler, wearing jeans and a plain sweater, her designer bags and perfect makeup gone. Hi, she said softly. I heard this location was opening today. I straightened up, dusting flour from my hands. We're not technically open for another hour. I know. She glanced around the cafe, taking in the vintage fixtures, the wall of family photos, the open kitchen where students learn traditional baking. I wanted to see what Dad actually wanted, what you created. And? It's beautiful. Her voice cracked. He would have loved it. Thomas cleared his throat. I'll go check on the bread. Marcus and Grandma followed his lead, leaving Maya and me alone in the front of the cafe. I got a job, she said suddenly, teaching art at the community center. It's not glamorous, but it's real work, I finished. That's good. She nodded, twisting her hands together. I noticed she wasn't wearing her engagement ring, our mother's ring, anymore. I brought this back. She pulled the ring from her pocket. It belongs in the family, with someone who understands what that really means. I took the ring, feeling its familiar weight. Have you talked to Wilfred? No. His lawyer advised against it, with the ongoing investigations. She managed a weak smile. Turns out I didn't know him at all. Neither did I, in the end. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching on the glass display cases, making everything glow warm and golden. In the kitchen, I could hear Grandma laughing with the students, the sound of dough being shaped, the hiss of the espresso machine as Tomas tested the day's roast. I miss you, Maya whispered. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. You're right, you don't. I cut her off. But maybe that's not the point. What is the point? I gestured around the cafe. This, creating something real, honoring what matters. I paused. Dad always said you had talent, before you got caught up in trying to compete with me. She blinked back tears. I was so jealous. You seemed to have everything figured out. I didn't. I was just better at pretending. I picked up a warm croissant, wrapped it in paper. Here, fresh from the oven, the way Dad used to make them. She took it, her hands shaking slightly. Thank you. Maya, I called as she turned to leave. The community center. They might need someone to teach kids about baking. Real baking, not just decorating cupcakes. Her eyes widened. Really? If you're interested, come by next week. We'll talk about it. After she left, Thomas emerged from the kitchen. You're going to teach her? Maybe. I picked up Mom's ring, studying it in the morning light. Sometimes the best revenge is showing someone a better way to live. The cafe filled quickly once we opened, word having spread about our third location. Regular customers mixed with new faces, all drawn by the smell of fresh bread and the warmth of real community. Look, Grandma said, pointing to the wall of family photos. She'd added a new one, me in my flour-dusted apron, teaching a class of eager students, looking happier than I ever had in a business suit. Perfect timing, Tomas said, appearing with a camera, because I have something to add. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a magazine, local flavors again, but this time the cover showed all 3 cafe locations, with the headline, Rising from the Ashes, How One Woman's Betrayal Led to a Food Revolution. They're calling you a pioneer, Marcus said proudly, bringing back traditional methods, training new artisans, creating real food communities. We're calling it what it is, Grandma corrected. Family legacy. The right way. I looked around at my cafe, at the happy customers, the learning students, the warmth and authenticity we'd created. At Thomas, who'd become more than just a consultant. At the ring in my hand, finally ready to be passed down to someone who understood its true value. No, I said, smiling. We're calling it justice, served fresh daily, with a side of karma. The morning sun streamed through the windows, and somewhere I knew Dad was smiling too,